Hey, what's happening, friend? Big Dog Ethan here, coming at you live on WRFN LP Pasco in Tennessee. Thank you so much for your patience as I was trying to get all this set up. So there's kind of a main reason why I was wanting to do this live. It's just because I wanted to be sure I was keeping up with any sort of live updates that could be happening about the subject I'll be talking about today, which of course is looks like this newfound war that we decided to effectively get involved in last week. Yeah, it would have been Friday. Well, I guess Friday night was whenever Israel struck. And actually, as I'll kind of get to it, Trump was actually the one who greenlit that plan. It was kind of like he didn't say no sort of thing. So we'll get into that. Anyways, enough of my babbling on that. Let's actually get to the actual segment. So again, as I'm sure you're aware, last Friday, Israel launched a seemingly sudden missile attack against Iran. We did have hints that something was going to happen. There were reports of U.S. military personnel and their families being ordered to leave different bases in the Middle East. But nonetheless, it certainly felt surprising to see Israel launch airstrikes on Tehran, the capital of Iran, with absolutely no restraint. A June 13th article from The Guardian. Oh, I'm showing you my notes there. You get to see my little secrets. Ooh. Anyways, so a June 13th article from The Guardian describes the immediate aftermath. Quote, as dawn broke over Tehran, firefighters and other rescue workers saw for the first time the full extent of the damage done by overnight Israeli strikes. Among the first locations reached by responders in the capital was a 12-story block of flats looming above a road junction and a shopping mall in the northern suburbs. A huge blast at around 4 a.m. had gutted 2 upper levels, showering debris into the street below. It soon became clear why this particular floor on this particular block had been selected by Israeli military planners. It was the home of Ali Shamkhani, one of the country's most senior security officials and a close aide of the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. That's so weird. I know I've heard his name pronounced before and I totally messed that up. Something else I should note too. Suddenly it seems like Israel knows how to do precise attacks. They actually know all of a sudden how to actually take out targets from afar. But for whatever reason in Gaza, which by the way, hell of a lot closer to Israel. Oh yeah, suddenly they just got to bomb the whole, just a bunch of houses, hospitals, as we'll talk about here in a few minutes, schools, civilian infrastructure. But no, whenever they really want to actually take someone out, oh no, then they'll decide to actually be precise with their strikes. Jesus. Anyways, so initial reports said that Shamkhani, who is also a key negotiator in ongoing indirect talks with the U.S. over Iran's nuclear program, was injured. But by mid-morning, it was announced that the 69-year-old had been killed. By then, it was clear that Israel's attacks was on a much greater scale than anyone had previously envisaged. Dozens of other targets in and around Tehran had been hit by warplanes. Across the capital, buildings were burning with gaping blackened holes where flats had existed hours before. Not on top, other top officials had been killed in this first wave of strikes, including Mohammad Bagheri, the chief of staff of Iran's armed forces, and Major General Hossein Salami, the head of the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, who died in an attack on the IRGC's headquarters. Other casualties included officials in charge of Iran's nuclear program and its ballistic missile arsenal, including 2 well-known scientists. I'm going to pause there and emphasize scientists. There were reports of further deaths and injuries, possibly among members of the dead men's families, though no confirmed numbers, unquote. And that's where everything spiraled out of control, with Iran and Israel trading missile, drone, and airstrikes. Y'all, it is quite literally impossible for me to keep up with all the updates. Like, every time I open Twitter or any social media platform, it feels like I'm in that meme. I wish I had it pulled up here. It feels like I'm in that meme. It was from some TV show. I think it was Community, where you have like Donald Glover Jr.'s character walking into a room with a box of pizza, and he's like shocked to see everyone fighting with a piece of furniture burning off to the side. Like, we went, okay, I don't want to say nothing, but we went from just Israel committing a plausible genocide and like us funding it. We went from that to a full-blown war within the matter of a few damn days. For those wondering, what's a good place for updates, it would be impossible for me to overstate the high quality and quantity of work that Dropsite News is putting out on its Twitter account right now. Now, I should note, like this radio station, it operates without a profit incentive, prioritizing quality reporting over profit maximization. Felt like I just had to, get that out there and pat us on the back. But anyways, as I was finishing writing the script at 1 a.m., Dropsite News, they were up and at 'em, pushing out yet another round of horrifying news. At 11:35 a.m., I think I've got the right one pulled up here. Yeah. Quote, breaking, new Iran missile barrage hits multiple sites across Israel. Iran has launched a fresh barrage of missiles targeting locations across Israel, with reported impacts in Tel Aviv, Haifa, and other areas. Again, this was literally last night. Multiple hits have been confirmed, though the full extent of damage is still being assessed. One strike reportedly landed near Soroka Medical Center in Beersheva, the largest hospital in southern Israel and the main medical facility for the Negev region. The hospital is also a teaching center affiliated with Ben Gurion University. Updates are still developing, unquote. Now at 11:50 p.m. Quote, update. New footage shows moment Iranian strike hit near Soroka Hospital in Beersheva. The facility serves as the main medical hub for the Negev region and treats Israeli civilians and military personnel, including soldiers wounded during operations in Gaza. Iranian strikes hit multiple locations across Israel in this wave, unquote. Another one. Oh boy, did they take this down? I think they might have taken this update down. Huh. Yeah, I mean, it looks like they took it down. I don't know if, whenever I'm uploading this, I'll see if maybe I can find some sort of update. That's interesting. Basically, it was just an update, where Iran was, basically Iran was just saying, we weren't trying to hit that hospital. We were trying to target this Israeli military command hub. Anyways, I guess I have it up on this little mini teleprompter that I brought with me, but I feel like that'd be kind of awkward if I'm like just kind of reading and staring at you while I don't even have anything pulled up here. So, at least according to that might be inaccurate, I guess. I don't know. I'm not too sure why they would have pulled that down, but I'm sure we'll find out soon. But Anyways, yeah. So that's at least what Iran was saying, is that they were trying to take down this this military facility, right? I think it was some kind of intelligence hub again. Now, we shouldn't get it twisted. A statement from a state news agency of a country that provides virtually, not even virtually, just provides no autonomy for its news outlets. Yeah, it isn't going to exonerate itself of this atrocity. Reporters Without Borders, they made it very clear in their 2025 World Press Freedom Index that Iran's outlets aren't just loosely controlled by the state like they are here in the US. No, they are legally prohibited from, quote, where's that quote at? Quote, offending the clergy and the supreme leader. Like, we're talking like dictator type approach to regulating their news outlets, right? And it's important to keep in mind, though, that destroying hospitals, yes, what Iran did was absolutely horrendous. I mean, that likely killed civilians. Actually, none of those tweets even said anything about death toll necessarily, but nonetheless, it should be important to keep in mind, because I think this might provide some kind of insight, into Iran's intent with this strike. Destroying hospitals has been the Israeli occupation forces' favorite hobby, while plausibly carrying out this genocide in Gaza, as the International Court of Justice determined more than a year ago. Side note, if you read the ruling and the evidence presented, I'll pull it up here on the screen for those who are watching the video. I'm not going to try to scroll down and find it because it's a pretty big thing. But if you actually go through and read even some of these claims, especially the one that I think is most damning is the part where they actually provide evidence as to what the Israeli military's intent was in carrying all this out. Typically, and this is what a number of international law experts have said in different interviews on different podcasts, it is very hard to prove that it is very hard to prove the intent to commit genocide, and that's typically the one thing that can usually make or break a genocide case. So the fact that they've got all of that evidence showing, basically they were just announcing yes, we want to kill everyone in the Gaza Strip because they're Palestinian, because they have them dead to rights on that. I mean, I feel almost kind of silly saying plausible genocide, but I do kind of like to be a little bit neurotic with the facts to an extent. I don't want to constrain myself too much, of course, because just, it's kind of awkward to keep saying that over and over again, but it is true. It is absolutely true. So, it seems insane that so many people don't want to acknowledge that fact. So, but where was I going with that? Oh, right. Considering Israel's targeting of hospitals and the fact that Iran has firmly stood with Hamas throughout the genocide and before, it's easy to imagine Iran intentionally attacking the hospitals as a kind of, deranged shrug, wink and a nod. That, I don't know if that's the right word to describe it, but I could kind of see it as their way of being hey, you've been doing this, so, if you want to complain about it, go ahead and make yourself, you can make yourself look like an idiot, right? But then again, come to think of it, Iran's justification, is pretty similar to Israel's. Israel's excuse has always been, oh, this hospital is actually being used by Hamas. And they provide no credible evidence, save for a video of a hospital worker claiming to be held by Hamas. In fact, I think we should revisit that video because it is something. Specifically, we're going to be looking at this fact check from France 24 English. They're kind of like an online news outlet based out of France. So yeah, Here we go.
Let's go truthing or faking. Kathleen is over by the big board. Good evening to you. A viral video of a nurse denouncing a Hamas occupation in the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza. Okay, truth or fake?
Well, Mark, here's the publications sharing this video, shared mostly by pro-Israeli accounts since November 11th. This video that we see right here has already accumulated over 1.5 million views in the platform, in a video where this so-called nurse allegedly works at Gaza's most talked about hospital right now, Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital. In the video, she denounces what she says is the Hamas occupation of this hospital, as she accuses Hamas of stealing the hospital's food, medicine, and fuel. So let's take a look at this video. It's about 1 minute long, so bear with me here. Let's begin by hearing what she says.
But the world has to know what Hamas is making here. They're taking over the entire
So she says the
hospital.
world has to know what Hamas is doing.
The fuel, the medicine.
Stealing food, medicine.
I have nothing to treat with.
And you could hear these alleged explosions in the background.
For a 5-year-old boy without morphine.
So here you could see her crying because she has to treat a 5-year-old's fracture without morphine since Hamas stole it. And then she continues crying throughout the video as we continue to hear more of these continued explosions in the background in this video that shows this alleged account of this nurse in the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza. Mark.
I mean, this video, whether it's true, whether it's fake, is incredibly powerful. That's one thing I would say. But it comes down to that question again, doesn't it, Kathleen? A truth or fake? Because I suppose some might call what we're seeing crisis acting if it's fake, or maybe if it's not. I mean, we're confused, but certainly what she's saying is compelling. But is it true or is it false? That's the question, isn't it? Still.
Well, that was definitely the point here, to confuse people, but due to several elements that we will explain, we have concluded that this video is fake and that it is staged, or as you call it, crisis acting. First of all, let's take a listen again to, if we fast forward to second 7 of the video.
What Hamas is making here.
You can hear that sound of explosion once again. It doesn't seem authentic enough, and that's what ECAD Facts concluded as well on X with a thorough technical examination of the audio in this video. They found that all of the explosions in the video sound exactly the same. And I believe that in real life, there's not one detonation that sounds exactly the same as the other. So here they also published this graph where we can notice this identical pattern of the sounds in throughout the video, concluding that the sounds used in the video were most certainly added in, probably using a sound bank or something like that. Then there's also her accent. 2 Arabic-speaking colleagues at France 24 pointed out pronunciation errors in Arabic. We're going to fast forward to where they heard these errors to second 50. Right there, where she says the word leave in Arabic, a mistake that, according to our journalists, a person fluent in Arabic would not have made. Then, for a final element, there's this red stethoscope that the nurse holds in her hand. One of our observers here, Matat Hajjaj, who spent several weeks in the Al-Ahli hospital, he said that usually in Gaza, the stethoscopes used in the hospitals are usually blue or red. And he also indicated that he at least never saw this person in this hospital. That is what also point out Gaza City's biggest hospital. Nonetheless, we're calling out this is a big fat fake. Mark.
Okay, so the woman in question, or the nurse in question, does this person actually exist? Is this person actually part of the medical team? I will say she does seem like a very good performer on camera.
Well, we haven't been able to identify the actress in this video just yet, but an Israeli woman that goes by the name of Hannah Abutul has been wrongly identified as the creator of this video, as pointed out in this publication with 1.9 million views. This woman describes herself as a digital creator, and she went to Instagram to disprove these claims, notably by pointing out the physical difference between both, in particular, the difference, the the absence of this mole that we see in the corner of the fake nurse's mouth, while confirming that this woman was falsely accused as the woman in the fake video. Mark.
Just lazy propaganda, right? And of course, what we should also note is that this lazy propaganda was being used to justify going into hospitals where there were no combatants and taking people hostage, or worst case scenario, bombing the hell out of it with U.S. weapons, by the way. So that's always nice. So yeah, I mean, this attack that Iran carried out on the hospital, allegedly intentionally carried out in the hospital. It could be interpreted as like some sort of twisted jab at Israel's war crimes, and again, lazy propaganda efforts to justify them. But nonetheless, we know how this always plays out. Israel is going to cling to its play the victim shtick and pretend as if it didn't initiate all this by carrying out a year and a half of blatant atrocities against a population governed by Iranian allies, and then further escalating tensions with Iran by launching missiles at its Syrian embassy last year. Let's see. Let me open up this now. Yes. Already, President Isaac Herzog, Israeli President Isaac Herzog, is already playing this old card, this old shtick, this old card. Quote, a baby in intensive care, a mother by their bedside, a doctor rushing between beds, an elderly resident in a nursing home. These were some of the targets of Iran's missile attacks on Israeli civilians this morning. He goes on with his emotional appeals, but I'm going to reserve my breath for the facts, however. From the BBC on April 13th, quote, Israeli airstrike destroys part of last fully functional hospital in Gaza City. Yeah, I have a lot of empathy for the Israeli president, for sure. Quote, an Israeli airstrike has destroyed part of the Ali Arab Hospital, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, the last fully functional hospital in Gaza City. Witnesses said the strike destroyed the intensive care and surgery departments of the hospital. Video posted online appeared to show huge flames and smoke rising after the missiles hit a 2-story building. People, including some patients still in hospital beds, were filmed rushing away from the site. The Israel Defense Force, IDF, or IOF more accurately, said it targeted the hospital because it contained a, quote, command and control center used by Hamas, unquote. No casualties were reported according to Gaza's Civil Emergency Service, unquote. Oh, gee, what another coincidence. Like the 50th command center that you suspect to be harboring Hamas combatants. In all fairness, that is an exaggeration, given that on October 2nd, 2024, there was this letter that 99 American healthcare workers in Gaza sent to President Biden and Vice President Harris. And in this letter, they report, I guess in the index, I didn't link the index. Oh, well, you can find the index right there of those who are watching the video. This letter reports that 19 of 36 hospitals were out of commission by that point. 19 out of 36. It's probably fair to say, that's the 25th unverified claim of Hamas hiding in a now decimated hospital that Israel decided to bomb? So let's be clear. Did Iran violate international law? Probably, according to a 2023 explainer from the Red Cross on medical facilities protection under international humanitarian law. Should any civilian deaths or injuries resulting from this attack be condemned, and should best wishes be given out to those civilians? Yes, I certainly would. But Does any Israeli leader have any right to bemoan the severe damage done to an Israeli hospital 2 months after the IDF partially destroys the last fully functioning hospital in Gaza? As far as the Israeli leaders are concerned, I'm going to say no. Oh, and before I forget, it looks like we've already graduated from bombing hospitals to targeting banking infrastructure. Because, it's not like any of this matters. It's not like tens of millions of people's lives hang in the balance. No. What's more important is for global leaders to have their, measuring contest. And of course, for US taxpayers to contribute to such a measuring contest instead of establishing universal social services like single-payer healthcare, universal basic income, free 4-year public college, universal housing programs. No. What we need, apparently, is to line the pockets of war profiteers so theocratic and imperial global powers on the other side of the globe can compete in a fierce game of outdoing each other's atrocities. Man. Anyways, this was posted by Drop Site News at 12:45 a.m. today. Quote, I also got to check too. How am I doing on battery? All right, well, it's not even showing me the estimate on here. So, okay, for those who are watching this online, you might randomly see the video cut out because, your boy was dumb, forgot his charger. Anyways, quote, breaking, again, from Drop Site News at 12:45 a.m. Iranian missiles strike Israeli stock exchange. Iranian missiles have struck the Israeli stock exchange building in Ramat Gan this morning. The strike follows Israeli-linked cyber attacks that crippled Iran's banking system and destroyed tens of millions in digital assets. You also had a missile strike on Ramat Gan. One of the missiles earlier this morning hit the Israeli stock exchange in Ramat Gan's Diamond District, causing structural damage and prompting emergency response efforts. Response efforts. Gosh, I cannot talk today. I'm really letting this whole tech stuff, get to me. But anyways, so so structural damage and, structural damage was caused by the strike, and prompted emergency response efforts in the Tel Aviv suburb. Cyber attacks on Iranian banks also was a thing. The hacker group Predatory Sparrow, widely believed to be linked to Israeli intelligence, claimed responsibility for a major breach on Bank Sepah on June 17th, wiping internal data and knocking ATMs, online banking, and branch services offline. But disruptions didn't stop there. Ansar Bank and Kosar Bank were also targets as well. Customers across Iran reported debit card failures and account access issues, likely secondary effects of the same cyber campaign. You also had Bank Melli. This is Iran's largest bank, and it was also taken offline, with ATM and online services going dark around June 17th. It remains unclear if this was part of Predatory Sparrow's operation, but its outage added to the nationwide financial paralysis. Healthcare, pension disbursements, fuel transactions, and everyday spending were heavily disrupted. IRGC Cyber Command imposed tight restrictions on officials' use of internet-connected devices due to security fears. You also had a $90 million crypto burn. On June 18th, the same group targeted Novitex, Iran's largest crypto exchange. Over $90 million in assets were permanently, quote unquote, burned by sending them to inaccessible wallets. blockchain analysis confirmed the intent was to damage IRGC-linked funding channels, not for financial gain, unquote. Now, thankfully, of course, our very responsible team of leaders in the White House have made sure to keep their distance from this conflict that could plunge us into a third world war any second. So confident in that because, you know, those guys in the White House, they got the working people at heart, right? They're not going to waste our money on wars. They're going to bring about peace and justice into the world, right? Right? June 17th from Ken Klippenstein. Title, quote, Trump secretly greenlit Iran war. Donald Trump is lying about almost everything regarding Israel and Iran. Trump knew that Israel was going to attack Iran, knew the basic outlines of the strategy, and implicitly gave the U.S. the okay. Trump also quietly and enthusiastically embraces Israel's unstated goal of regime change. Two high-level U.S. officials involved in the internal discussions tell me. Trump hasn't officially approved anything, hasn't committed anything to paper, and hasn't signed off on any specific act. But in the dance of phone calls and back-channel messages and things said and not said, the two countries found agreement. Trump has given Israel a green light by not saying no. This is the world of statecraft at the highest level, where leaders say one thing and do another. This is not only for deniability's sake or to intentionally mislead the public. It's just the way of the world that includes a set of rules and workarounds that allow leaders to never be frank. Side note, actually, this is during my first live broadcast. I didn't put it on the channel just because there are a lot of other tech issues, but that was kind of what the documentary, the clip of that documentary I was showing, hypernormalization was kind of trying to get at. That's something that Vladimir Putin and Trump, they know how to do that sort of thing. They are very good at that sort of thing. But I digress. Quote, there are massive risks involved in Israel's campaign and certainly in America's implicit support. But in the ways of national security, we just don't get to discuss them. It all started during the Biden administration, the two knowledgeable insiders tell me, when Israel first pitched America on the campaign playing out now. Fearing escalation and things spinning out of control, fearing the United States getting dragged in, fearing Iranian civilian deaths, Biden vetoed, quote unquote, Israel's plan. That is under the table and off the record. In the shadow of deniable diplomacy, Washington's lack of assent meant that direct action to operate outside the context of the Hamas war was off the table. Instead, Israel in 2024 carried out a spate of assassinations of extremely high-level adversaries. First, Israel killed Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. Then they bombed an Iranian embassy building in Damascus, killing high-ranking Iranian generals. Israel carried out the devastating pager operation and killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. Nobody expected these operations to be as successful as they were, which emboldened Israel. On April 21st, 2024, Iran attacked Israel in a massive and unprecedented missile and drone attack. Quietly, the U.S. military helped to defend its number one ally. The Arab states looked the other way. The Iranian attack was largely thwarted, which, sources tell me, came to the surprise of the U.S. government, and further emboldened Israel. Even so, Joe Biden didn't want a broader war and the risk it entailed. So he kicked the can down the road to Donald Trump. None of this, of course, began in 2024. Iran and Israel have been engaged in a tit-for-tat shadow war for years, with Iran arming Hamas and other Israeli adversaries. This culminated in Hamas's October 7th attack in 2023, a traumatic event that could not have taken place without Iran's long-standing support and funding, unquote. We need to travel down a bit of a side tangent to... bumped into the mic there, to provide some important context. It wasn't just Iran's support that put Hamas in charge of the Gaza Strip. There was another country who had a role in that. And to any apolitical normies listening right now, you're in for a plot twist. This is from a 2018 Intercept video featuring Mehdi Hassan. The title of it, Blowback: How Israel Helped Create Hamas.
The Palestinian militant group Hamas has carried out brutal acts of terror against Israeli civilians, and Israeli and American leaders are always keen to tell us how dangerous and evil Hamas is.
The inhumanity of Hamas.
I have no sympathy for Hamas.
That keep shelling Israel with thousands of rockets and mortar shells.
But what if I told you that Israel helped create Hamas? Officially, Hamas, which is the acronym for an Arabic phrase meaning Islamic Resistance Movement, was founded in 1987, at the start of the first Palestinian Intifada, or uprising against the Israeli occupation. But its roots were planted much earlier. The Hamas founder Sheikh Ahmed Yassin was a half-blind, disabled Palestinian cleric and member of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Brotherhood had been repressed by the Egyptians in Gaza prior to 1967, but once the Israelis invaded and occupied the Strip, they didn't just turn a blind eye to these Islamists, they encouraged them. See, the Israelis, especially right-wing Israelis, wanted to undermine the power of the dominant Palestinian political force at that time, the nationalist PLO, at the heart of which was the secular Fatah party of Yasser Arafat, their bête noire.
بغصن الزيتون في يدي وببندقية الثائر في يدي.
By empowering Sheikh Yassin and the Muslim Brotherhood, Israeli leaders thought they could divide and rule the occupied Palestinians, play them off against each other, secular nationalists against religious Islamists. So in 1978, when Yassin wanted to officially register his Islamic Association, which was basically the precursor to Hamas, the Israelis were only too keen to help. Yassin built and grew a network of Islamist social institutions across Gaza, including schools and clubs and mosques, and Israel helped fund some of those projects. Most American politicians have no clue about any of this, although the former Republican Congressman Ron Paul once made this point on the floor of the House.
Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat.
Arafat himself told an Italian newspaper, quote, Hamas is a creature of Israel. He even claimed that former Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin admitted as much to him, calling it a fatal error. Now, you might be wondering, why should I believe mad Ron Paul or the famously shady Yasser Arafat? Well, you don't have to. You can believe top Israeli and US officials who've basically owned up to all this. Brigadier Yitzhak Segev, for example, who was the Israeli military governor in Gaza, and later told a New York Times reporter that he helped finance the Islamic movement. The Israeli government gave me a budget, he said, and the military government gives to the mosques. Colonel David Hakam, who worked in Gaza in the late 1980s as an Arab affairs expert in the Israeli military, has admitted that the original sin was Israeli support for Yassin in the late 70s. But at the time, he has argued, nobody thought about the possible results. Well, Avner Cohen did. Cohen was the Israeli official who was responsible for religious affairs in Gaza for more than 2 decades, and who now says, quote, Hamas, to my great regret, is Israel's creation. Yeah, Cohen's words. He actually wrote an official report to his superiors in the mid-1980s, warning them not to play divide and rule in the occupied territories and calling on Israel to, quote, break up this monster before this reality jumps in our face. But no one else on the Israeli side really took the possibility of blowback seriously at that time. They never do they? Hamas has since killed far more Israeli civilians than any secular Palestinian militant group, and its leaders have been pretty viciously anti-Israeli and even anti-Semitic in their rhetoric.
لن نعترف بإسرائيل.
لا مكان لكم بيننا ولا مستقبل لكم بين الأمم إنكم إلى زوال.
Sheikh Yassin would eventually be assassinated by an Israeli airstrike in Gaza.
Sheikh Yassin and its organization, the Hamas, are responsible to the killings of more than 400 Israelis. So the question shouldn't be why now. I think it should be why not before.
Why not before? Well, because before, Israel was actually nudging and winking at Yassin and co., building them up as a rival to Arafat's Fatah. The die was cast for blowback. Blowback, incidentally, that they decided to double down on when they assassinated Yassin.
You can hear the crowds chanting for Hamas, and any idea that this operation would actually suppress or diminish that organization seems to be ill-judged.
The inconvenient truth is that Hamas is in part a creature of Israel's own making, an enemy that Israel spent more than 20 years helping to build up, and then spent the next 20 years, the past 20 years that is, trying to bomb, besiege, and blockade out of existence. The 3 Gaza wars fought by Israel against Hamas since 2008 killed around 2,000 Palestinian civilians and a dozen Israeli civilians. That's the real human cost of blowback. David Long, a former Middle East expert at the US State Department under Ronald Reagan, told journalist Robert Dreyfus, "I thought the Israelis were playing with fire. I didn't realize they'd end up creating a monster. But I don't think you ought to mess around with potential fanatics. It's a lesson both the Israelis and the Americans never seem to learn, though. And as usual, innocent people, in this case Palestinians and Israelis, continue to lose their lives as a result."
As a matter of fact, they were very instrumental in not only making sure that they rose to power, but according to Drop Site News co-founder Jeremy Scahill, despite the fact that they keep saying, "Oh, we want to go to the Gaza Strip to totally eliminate Hamas." Based on a June 3rd interview from the Breaking Points podcast, they basically rejected this offer at the negotiating table for a ceasefire. This offer that Hamas made to totally leave the Gaza Strip.
The bottom line on this is that Hamas has made many concessions in this back and forth, but they've identified as minimal red lines that they want a clear path to an end to the genocide. They've said in their own proposal that the moment a ceasefire agreement is signed, Hamas will totally relinquish governing authority and all power in Gaza. This is extraordinary to see this in the document, because it's Hamas on the record saying we will relinquish power in favor of an independent Palestinian committee of technocrats. When we then obtained all 3 versions of these proposals that we published in full last week, and what's extraordinary is that the Israeli proposal took that out. It took out of the ceasefire framework Hamas agreeing to immediately relinquish governing authority of Gaza the moment a ceasefire is signed. And, there's some theories that, that have been floating around for some time that Netanyahu wants Hamas to remain in power because he can easily demonize them as a terrorist organization.
I mean, hasn't he effectively said exactly that in the past?
It's complicated. Netanyahu has, for certain strategic reasons, said that the only way to thwart a unified Palestinian state is to keep Hamas in power in Gaza. But there are many other layers to the context of what happened at the time that we could go into if you want. But yes, there certainly are benefits to having a party in power that you have effectively dehumanized, demonized, that is listed on the State Department list of terrorist organizations, the British designation as a terrorist organization. But I think it's much deeper. They even are saying it's unacceptable for Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, to be in charge in Gaza. And he has basically acted as an agent of the occupation. That's how he's widely seen among Palestinians. So it's not just about Hamas. It's that Israel doesn't want Palestinians in control of Palestine at all. And that's really what I think the game is here. It's not just about Hamas. It's that we don't want a Palestinian committee. They want probably a puppet sort of coalition of certain Arab nations that have normalized relations with Israel to be the ones that come in as an outside force. They don't want Palestinians in charge of their own political destiny or to continue forward with a path of a national liberation struggle.
So anyways, that's all to say that I think Klippenstein is oversimplifying the reasons as to why Hamas has been able to stay in power, because Israel was also instrumental in facilitating Hamas's rise to power, and throughout these negotiations have rejected offers from its adversary to permanently give up their political power, again, despite Israel full-throatedly making these public assertions that its goal is to eliminate Hamas. That said, broadly speaking, Klippenstein is correct. Israel and Iran have been in each other's throats for a while. The Tennessee Holler actually reposted this clip from a Twitter account called the New York War Crimes, showing that for at least 30 years, Israel and the U.S. have consistently said, "Oh no, Iran could have a nuclear weapon in 10 seconds." Regime change? Anyone? Anyone? And that is exactly the justification that the Israeli and the Trump regime are using to manufacture consent for going to war with Iran. Now, like many of you, I'm sure the comparison is sitting right out there in the open. The Iraq War.
Every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence. What you will see is an accumulation of facts and disturbing patterns of behavior. The facts in Iraq's behavior demonstrate that Saddam Hussein and his regime have made no effort to disarm as required by the international community. Indeed, the facts and Iraq's behavior show that Saddam Hussein and his regime are concealing their efforts to produce more weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein has chemical weapons. Saddam Hussein has used such weapons. And Saddam Hussein has no compunction about using them again against his neighbors and against his own people. And we have sources who tell us that he recently has authorized his field commanders to use them. He wouldn't be passing out the orders if he didn't have the weapons or the intent to use them. This body places itself in danger of irrelevance if it allows Iraq to continue to defy its will without responding effectively and immediately. The issue before us is not how much time we are willing to give the inspectors to be frustrated by Iraqi obstruction, but how much longer are we willing to put up with Iraq's noncompliance before we, as a council, we as the United Nations say, enough, enough. We must not shrink from whatever is ahead of us. We must not fail in our duty and our responsibility to the citizens of the countries that are represented by this body.
Oh, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. We need to go to war. So yeah, I mean, obviously this reeks of that exact same moment. And I'm not gonna lie. I mean, this comparison really stings. In my senior year of high school, 2018, 2019, there were really only two political topics that really struck a chord with me. And these are really the first ones. As I was starting to become a little more aware of the political realm. One, of course, was legalized bribery. That shouldn't shock anyone. But the second one was the Iraq War. And the Iraq War had stuck with me because I was, 2 years old when we invaded. And as I got a little older, I ended up having a couple of family members in the military getting stationed out there. So naturally, I was asking, why are they out there? And at the time, teachers and relatives would say the things that they read in the papers, heard on the radio, saw on TV. Saddam Hussein helped bin Laden attack us. He might be making some horrible weapons to use against the US too, so your family's gonna go protect us. So, naturally, learning about the absolute manipulation of the American public to support a truly pointless, wasteful, and traumatizing war, that kind of threw me for a loop, especially after seeing Adam McKay's kind of satirical biopic, Vice. And then, of course, coming across the collateral murder video a couple of years later when I was in college. I don't know how I never heard about that video before I got into college. It's the one that Julian Assange famously went to prison for distributing, showing U.S. helicopter gunning down a BBC journalist, some civilians, and then the first responders, all while the U.S. military personnel chuckled about it over the radio. Yeesh. All of that comes to mind as we dreadfully await another war. What gives me a bit of comfort, however, is that we are not seeing the kind of mass hypnosis and strong propaganda front that the polling for the Iraq War had in 2003. For one, even the Trump administration is not totally on the same page around all this. I had the clip. I'm sure many of you have already seen it. It's it's a clip of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, testifying to the Senate Intelligence Committee on March 27th.
Iran's cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program. In the past year, we've seen an erosion of a decades-long taboo in Iran on discussing nuclear weapons in public, likely emboldening nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is at its highest levels and is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons.
Where she's basically like, listen, we have a lot of concerns about their cyber infrastructure and their capabilities to attack us that way, but we're still not really convinced that they actually want to build a nuclear weapon. So literally, Tulsi Gabbard was saying that, but meanwhile, Trump, oh no, he's going full-throated on the whole, they're trying to build a nuke thing. And in fact, he was even asked about this on Air Force One, and they were like, the reporter was like, yo, dog, like, your Director of National Intelligence says you don't have any evidence for nukes being built. Literally, Trump just goes, I don't agree with that, okay? I don't agree with that. All right, she's wrong. She's wrong. Iran's building nukes. We need to go to war. Wonderful. Now, so already there's some dissent within the administration. Matter of fact, there's even dissent like just among conservatives in general. I just saw a clip, I think it was today, of Theo Vaughn saying, hey, I know I'm like not a soldier and all, but like, I just want to say I really don't think we should go to war. I could go off on a whole other tangent about like that whole line of thinking of like, oh, like just because like you're not a U.S. soldier doesn't mean your opinions about war are valid, but whatever. It does get a little more confusing, though, whenever we consider the IAEA. So the International Atomic Energy Association, it's an independent UN group tasked with verifying other nations' uranium stockpiles to ensure that they're not, developing more nukes. They're flat out unable to say if Iran's developing nukes. But they have been able to determine that Iran increased its supply of 60% enriched uranium. According to the Associated Press's calculations, Iran increased its supply of 60% enriched uranium by 50% since February. Now, the good news is that they need 90% enriched uranium to make a nuke. Though the AP asserts that it's only a short technical step away, quote unquote. But all this speculation, of course, begs the question, why can't the IAEA go in and verify Iran's stockpile? Well, we had this thing called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, colloquially known as the Iran Nuclear Agreement, signed by France, Britain, Germany, Russia, China, Iran, and the U.S. under the Obama administration in 2015. Now, the IAEA was allowed to come inspect all of Iran's nuclear facilities, and they verified that there was no evidence of nuclear weapons being developed. Despite the IAEA reaffirming its findings in a May 1st, 2018 press release, Trump decided to pull out of the deal a week later. The deal eventually falls apart, and Iran goes back to messing around with uranium, and of course, they won't let the IAEA in there anymore. So we shouldn't get it twisted. For one, even if Iran is building a nuke, honestly, we should not be going to war with them. The amount of devastation that, I mean, just even the economic stuff. I mean, I was driving up here on my way up to Nashville. I was seeing even gas prices are starting to go up here. I haven't seen it gone up to $2.90 in a while. And if they close, I'm forgetting the name, but if they close basically like this body of water that's like essential for international trade, ooh boy, we are in for a real world of hurt. So first off, like, we just shouldn't even be in this war, and the fact that we're coming in on Israel's side of all this, it's not worth our taxpayer dollars. It just ain't it. And frankly, like, war, as a matter of fact, is just immoral. Like, this is the 21st century. We should be able to know how to do negotiations and all that good stuff. But of course, cooler heads, for whatever reason, are just simply unable to prevail. So, looks like we're going to war. And frankly, this is a war that seems like Trump has been gunning for since 2018. Like, even in 2020, he assassinated General Soleimani with no provocation. And it also doesn't help either that the guy took $250 million from Sheldon Adelson in 2020, a hardline pro-Israel freak, and took another $100 million from his wife for the last election. So, because Trump is owned by the pro-Israel individuals, because he's just about lost his damn mind to dementia like the last guy, and because the rest of Congress is in the pockets of pro-Israel PACs like AIPAC and DMFI, we're going to war. Civilians will die, war profiteers will get to buy a new yacht, and you get to pay for it. Totally a natural state of affairs, yeah? Hey friend, thank you so much for checking out this week's episode of The Unnatural State of Affairs. If you like what I had to say, hit that like button. Got some thoughts? Share them in the comments section below. And of course, be sure to hit that like button so you can be notified the moment a new episode drops. The show broadcasts on Radio Free Nashville every Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. Tune in at www.radiofreenashville.org to enjoy some nihilistic left-leaning commentary and an hour of punk and rap music. Thanks again, friend, and I'll see you next week. Take it easy.